When I pulled up to the old dirt road leading to our family cabin, the one my late husband Robert and I built with our own hands, I saw a bright red sold sign hammered into the lawn. My son Leo's wife, Chloe, saw my car and came out onto the porch, looking at me with a cold smile and said, "Oh, we sold the cabin last month. We decided to keep the profits for immediate family." The words cut through me sharper than the winter air. Immediate family. I, who for 5 years had poured $800 a month into Leo's business venture, who had skipped my own doctor's appointments to make sure his startup had capital, who had sold my own mother's jewelry to fund his dream. I was not immediate family. I just sat there in my old sedan, the engine ticking quietly, staring at the sign that declared my memories were for sale. I watched Leo come out and stand behind Chloe, refusing to meet my eyes, his hand resting on the shoulder of the woman who had just auctioned off my past. The hand-stitched quilt I had planned to bring up for the winter lay on my passenger seat, a useless, colorful square of love. I had spent weeks on it, imagining it draped over the old rocking chair by the fireplace, the same chair Robert had rocked Leo in as a baby. I had saved up $2,000 to give them for their anniversary, to help with the business, of course. I had called my sister Clara in Denver to tell her I was going up to the cabin to open it for the season. I had bought groceries, cleaned my car, and packed my bags, thinking of the quiet joy of the mountains. All of it shattered by that one cruel sentence. We only kept it for immediate family. Leo finally looked up, his voice sounding distant, rehearsed. "Mom, it was a practical decision. The upkeep was too much and we needed the capital for the business." But I knew it was a lie. I had seen the pictures on social media. I saw Chloe's parents on a new boat, a post captioned, "Enjoying the fruits of our children's success." I saw her brothers on a lavish vacation in Hawaii. I saw Chloe's brand new designer handbag, which I had indirectly paid for with the extra $1,500 I'd given them last month for a supposed equipment failure. I saw everything I wasn't meant to see. A week later, precisely 7 days after that gut-wrenching moment, Leo called me, and his voice was completely different. Gone was the confident businessman who had sold my heritage from under me. Now he sounded panicked, desperate. "Mom, the venture is on the verge of collapse. Our main investor is pulling out unless we can show another $50,000 in capital by Friday. You forgot to make the monthly transfer." His voice cracked, as if the sky was falling. I stayed silent for a moment, picturing all the times I had rushed to the bank, all the times I'd put off my own needs to make sure his dream stayed afloat, all the simple meals I'd eaten so he could have what he wanted. And now, after they had erased a huge part of my life, he had the nerve to call me as if nothing had happened. "Leo," I said, my voice steady in a way that scared even me. "Didn't you know? I only invest in immediate family." The silence that followed was so absolute I could hear the clock ticking on my wall. For the first time in years, it wasn't my heart that was pounding with anxiety, but his. "Mom, I don't get it," he stammered. "We've always been your priority. You said you believed in this business." Lies. All of it was lies, wrapped in the ambitious tone he only used when he needed my savings. The same tone he had used to ask for the down payment on their house, for the new car, for the endless stream of business expenses that I now realized were just funding a life of luxury I was not invited to share. For so long, I had felt like I was treading on thin ice, measuring every dollar I spent on myself against their perceived needs, hoping to earn a small piece of their time and affection. I was the supportive mother, the understanding mother-in-law, the silent benefactor who never questioned their choices. But that phrase, immediate family, had flipped a switch inside me that had been off for far too long. I did a quick, painful calculation in my head. $800 a month for 5 years was $48,000. The initial seed money was $25,000. The emergencies, the unexpected costs, the special requests, it was well over $80,000. $80,000 that I had taken from my retirement fund, from the nest egg Robert had left me, to ensure I would be secure in my old age. And for what? To be treated like a stranger whose most precious memories could be sold without a second thought. That night after the call, I sat in my armchair and cried. Not tears of sadness, but of rage. Tears of frustration for the years of blind trust and quiet sacrifice. I cried for the foolish, loving mother I had been, who had confused financial support with genuine love. When I woke up the next morning, a shift had occurred within me. It wasn't just the sting of betrayal, it was a cold, hard clarity. I looked at myself in the mirror. The same tired face, the same wrinkles etched by years of worrying about everyone but myself. But my eyes held a new light, a steely resolve I hadn't seen before. I went to the kitchen and made my morning tea, just as I had for 50 years. But this time, I didn't worry about whether Leo had managed to solve his business crisis. For the first time in a very long time, my own peace was my first thought of the day. I sat down with my bank statements and a notepad. I wanted to see the full scope of my naivety in black and white. Monthly investment of $800 for 60 months, $48,000. Initial capital, $25,000. Emergency funds for equipment, travel, and other essentials, at least $15,000. The car cosign I ended up paying off, $6,000. In total, it was $94,000. $94,000, gone. Money from my pension, from the sale of our first home after Robert passed. Money I had carefully saved for decades. All of it, handed over to support a lifestyle and a business that I was now sure didn't even exist. The phone rang, and I saw Leo's name. My stomach didn't lurch with anxiety. I just watched it ring. A few minutes later, it rang again. This time, Chloe. I ignored it. Then a text from Leo. "Mom, we have to talk. It's an emergency." I deleted it. That afternoon, I decided to visit my old friend Arthur, who ran a classic car club Robert and I used to be a part of. I hadn't seen him in years. I was always too busy, too worried about Leo's finances. Today, I went just for me. The smell of oil and old leather brought back a flood of memories of Robert, of a life filled with joy and genuine partnership. I remembered that confident woman who rebuilt a carburetor with her husband, not the anxious woman who checked her bank balance with a knot in her stomach. Where did she go? When did I start thinking my value was tied to the balance of my checkbook? I stopped by my bank, the same one where I had made so many transfers. The manager, Mr. Peterson, greeted me warmly. He had processed every single wire to Leo's account. He had seen my savings dwindle. I walked right into his office. "Mr. Peterson," I said, "I need to freeze all my accounts and get a full review of my transaction history. And I need to know how to protect my assets from unauthorized access." He looked concerned, more genuinely so than my own son had in years. "Of course, Margaret. Is everything all right?" "Everything is finally all right," I replied. While he worked, my phone buzzed relentlessly. Leo, Chloe, Leo again. It was like they had a sixth sense for when the money tap was being turned off. I switched it off. "Margaret," Mr. Peterson said, handing me the final paperwork. "I don't mean to overstep, but you've been incredibly generous. I hope you're doing this for you." "I am," I said, for the first time in a long time. Leaving the bank, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. My money was mine again. I went home and thought about all the dreams I had deferred. The cross-country road trip Robert and I had planned, the art classes I wanted to take, the friends I had lost touch with. When I pulled into my driveway, I saw 2 cars parked out front, Leo's and Chloe's, and they were already inside my house. They had a key. I had given it to them for emergencies, never imagining they would be the emergency. I took a deep, steadying breath. It was time for the first board meeting of my new life. I walked in to find a scene that I will carry with me forever. Leo was pacing my living room floor, while Chloe sat on my sofa, rifling through a box of my financial documents. My documents. "What is going on in here?" I asked, my voice echoing in the sudden silence. They both spun around, looking guilty but defiant. Chloe was the first to speak, her voice dripping with fake concern. "Margaret, thank heavens. We were so worried. We need to talk about your finances." "My finances?" I asked with a calm that unnerved them. They seemed to be the only thing we ever talk about. Leo stopped pacing and looked at me, his eyes filled not with love, but with financial desperation. "Mom, the bank called us. They said you froze the accounts. Mr. Peterson said you were worried about unauthorized access. We don't understand." Chloe stood up, holding one of my bank statements. Margaret, darling, we know managing all of this can be overwhelming at your age. Sometimes it's easy to get confused. The word confused hung in the air. I finally understood. This wasn't just a visit. It was a takeover attempt. They wanted to have me declared incompetent so they could get their hands on the rest of my money. I am not confused, I said, my voice as hard as steel. I am finally seeing things clearly. And the first thing I see is two people who need to get out of my house. Leo stepped forward, adopting the condescending tone he used when he thought I was being difficult. Mom, we're worried. This sudden change in behavior, cutting us off, selling the cabin without telling us. I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. I sold the cabin? That's fascinating because I seem to remember Chloe telling me that you sold it. Which one is it, Leo? Am I a confused old woman or are you a liar? The raw truth of the accusation silenced them. Everything you have is going to be ours someday anyway, Chloe blurted out, her mask of concern falling away to reveal pure, ugly greed. We're just helping you manage it. There it was. In their minds, I was already gone, a ghost haunting my own assets. I was just a walking, talking inheritance that had inconveniently decided to stop dispensing funds ahead of schedule. Out, I said, pointing to the door. Both of you, now. Mom, you can't, Leo pleaded, the panic returning to his voice. The business, the loans you co-signed, our mortgage, you can't just abandon us. I can't. My voice rose, filled with the fire of 5 years of suppressed frustration. You sold my memories without a second thought. You built a life on my savings while treating me like an obligation. You stood by while your wife told me I wasn't immediate family. Chloe started to cry, but they were tears of rage, not remorse. You can't do this. We made plans based on your support. We have a certain lifestyle to maintain. A lifestyle based on my money, I shot back. Not my love, not my company, just my money. And now that the bank is closed, I'm suddenly confused and need to be managed. Get out. They finally moved toward the door, defeated and furious. Before leaving, Leo turned back, his face a mask of childish anger. This is a mistake, Mom. You're going to end up old and alone, and there will be no one there for you. Leo, I said, a deep sadness washing over me. I've been alone for years. The only difference is, now it's my choice. As I locked the door behind them, the silence in my house felt like a sanctuary. It was the silence of sovereignty. That night, I didn't sleep. Not from sorrow, but from a surge of defiant energy. If they wanted a war, they would get one. But I would fight it on my terms. At dawn, I was at the office of a lawyer, a man named David Chen, recommended by my friend Arthur. Unlike the sharks Leo and Chloe would surely hire, Mr. Chen specialized in elder law and protecting seniors from financial abuse. Margaret, he said after I laid out the whole story, what your son and daughter-in-law are doing is a classic case of financial exploitation. It's predatory, and it's illegal. The fact that they entered your home and went through your documents is also breaking and entering. His words were a balm on my wounded spirit. I wasn't overreacting. I was being abused. We need to document everything, he said. Every transfer, every text message, every lie. We are going to build a fortress around your assets. We spent the morning going through my records. When Mr. Chen saw the final tally of $94,000, he shook his head. With this, you could have taken that cross-country trip 10 times over. Instead, you funded the lives of 2 people who sold your history for a new boat. When I left his office, I had a battle plan. First, change the locks. Second, install a security system. Third, move my assets to a new bank under a trust that they could never touch. And fourth, start living. My first stop was a locksmith. Margaret, said the owner, a man who had known me for 30 years. What can I do for you? Another emergency for Leo? He had seen me over the years, buying things for their house, always in a hurry, always stressed. No, Bill, this one's for me, I said. I need the best locks you've got. While he was helping me, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was Chloe, her voice syrupy sweet. Margaret, please don't hang up. I know you're upset. It was all a misunderstanding. Leo and I want to make it right. How about we come over for dinner? I'll make your favorite pot roast. The manipulation was so blatant it was almost comical. Chloe, what's the name of Leo's company? The silence on the other end was telling. Well, it's a tech startup. It's complicated. Does it have a name? I pressed. We really miss you, Margaret, she said, dodging the question. Do you miss me, Chloe? Or do you miss my money? Both, she said, a sliver of honesty in her voice. Margaret, we need your help, but we love you. If you love me, I said, why did you sell the place my husband and I built? Why was I not important enough to be included in that decision? Another silence. She had no answer. I'm going to say this once, I said, my voice calm and final. For 5 years, you treated me like a bank. You exploited my love and my trust. Now that the money is gone, you suddenly remember you love me. The answer is no. I hung up the phone and felt a wave of liberation. That afternoon, I went to a travel agency. I walked out an hour later with brochures for a trip along the Pacific Coast Highway. That evening, as I was looking at maps, a car pulled up outside. My heart jumped, but it was my neighbor from across the street, Eleanor. Margaret, she said, I'm not one to pry, but I heard shouting at your house the other day. I just wanted to make sure you were all right. Her simple human decency brought tears to my eyes. Come in, Eleanor, I said. Have I got a story for you? I told her everything. She listened, her expression shifting from shock to anger on my behalf. You did the right thing, she said when I finished. My own brother tried the same thing with my parents' estate. He said they were getting confused when they decided to donate to their church instead of giving him another loan. It's a textbook move for greedy relatives. Her story gave me strength, a sense of not being alone in this awful fight. The next day, the locksmith came and changed the locks. As he worked, I called my sister Clara. Margaret, she said, I was so worried. Leo called me yesterday saying you were having some sort of breakdown and weren't answering your phone. Clara, I said, it's about time you heard the real story. I told her everything, the cabin, the money, the fake business. When I was done, she was silent for a long moment. Oh, honey, she finally said, I always wondered. Every time he talked about his business, it sounded so vague. He always talked about Mom's investment, never our hard work. He talked about you like you were a venture capitalist, not his mother. Her words were painful, but they were the truth I needed to hear. He hadn't just been lying to me. He'd been framing my love as a business transaction to the whole family. You know what else? Clara continued. Chloe once told me, once Margaret is gone, we'll be able to really upgrade the cabin. As if they were just waiting for you to die to get what they really wanted. The cruelty of it took my breath away. They weren't just taking my money in the present, they were planning a future built on my death. After the call, I sat in my newly secured house and let the full weight of their betrayal wash over me. Then the doorbell rang. It was Eleanor holding 2 mugs of tea. Thought you might need a friend, she said. We sat and talked for hours. They all read from the same playbook, she said with a wry smile. Chapter 1. Isolate them from friends and family. Chapter 2. Create a sense of constant crisis. Chapter 3. If they push back, claim they're mentally unstable. We laughed, a dark, knowing laugh. Did you ever feel guilty? I asked. For the first few months, every day, she admitted. But then I saw my brother get a real job. I saw him learn to stand on his own 2 feet. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is let them face the consequences of their own choices. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in years. I drove to the cemetery to visit Robert's grave. I always had an excuse not to go. Leo needed something, or the money for flowers was better spent on his business. I sat on the grass beside his headstone. Robert, my love, I whispered. I think I messed up. I tried so hard to give our son everything. I think I forgot to teach him how to be a man. Your man. The money you left for me, I gave it all away trying to buy his love. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves, and for a moment I felt his presence, his quiet strength. But not anymore, my love. I'm taking my life back. I cleaned his headstone, laid a bouquet of his favorite daisies, and just sat there, feeling a sense of peace I hadn't felt in a very long time. When I got home, there were 3 cars out front. Leo's, Chloe's, and a fancy sedan I didn't recognize. My new security camera feed on my phone showed them on my porch, looking agitated. I didn't get out of my car. I called Mr. Chen. "David, they're here again. They've brought someone with them. Stay in the car, Margaret. I'm on my way. And I'm calling the police. After our meeting, I filed a temporary restraining order. They are violating it right now." Minutes later, 2 police cars and Mr. Chen's car pulled up. I watched as the officers calmly spoke to Leo and Chloe. I saw my son's face, red with anger. I saw Chloe start to cry her crocodile tears. An officer came to my window. "Ma'am, it's safe to get out now. They'll be leaving." As I got out of the car, Leo yelled from the street, "Mom, this is insane. You're calling the cops on your own family." "Family doesn't try to steal your home," I called back, my voice clear and strong. "Family doesn't lie for years. Family doesn't commit financial abuse." "You owe us," Chloe shrieked. "You co-signed on loans. You promised to support the business." Mr. Chen stepped forward. "Any further communication will go through my office, and I'd advise you to stop making threats as my client has a 5-year record of every dollar she has given you." I watched them leave, a cloud of dust and fury behind them. I knew this was far from over, but for the first time, I felt powerful. I had the truth, and I had backup. That night, Eleanor invited me for dinner. I met her children who were visiting. They were kind, respectful, and genuinely interested in my life. Not once did they mention money. "This is what I wanted with Leo," I confessed to Eleanor later. "And maybe you'll have it someday," she said gently. "But first, he has to grow up, and that's a journey he has to take on his own." The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. My cameras showed Leo's car driving by my house slowly, several times a day. They were watching me. "This is good for us," Mr. Chen said. "It shows a pattern of harassment." On Friday morning, my doorbell rang. On the camera, I saw a woman in a business suit holding a clipboard. "Good morning, Mrs. Clark," she said when I opened the door. "I'm from Adult Protective Services. We've received an anonymous report expressing concern for your welfare." My blood ran cold. They had escalated to involving the government. "May I see your identification?" I asked, my voice steady. She showed me her badge. It looked legitimate. "I'm Ms. Davis. May I come in?" I let her in, my mind racing. Mr. Chen had prepared me for this. "We've received a report," she began, "that you've been exhibiting erratic behavior, making large, unusual financial changes, isolating yourself from family, and showing signs of paranoia, like installing an unnecessary security system." Every word was a poisoned dart, designed to paint me as a frail, disturbed old woman. "Ms. Davis," I said calmly, "before I answer any questions, I'm going to call my lawyer." "That won't be necessary if you have nothing to hide," she said smoothly. "I have everything to hide," I replied. "My dignity, my assets, and my sanity. I'm calling my lawyer." Mr. Chen arrived in 20 minutes, his face grim. "Ms. Davis," he said after examining her credentials, "I trust you have a court order for this investigation, because my client is already in the middle of legal proceedings regarding harassment and financial exploitation by the very family who likely filed this report." He placed a thick file on the coffee table. "Here is a complete record of 5 years of financial abuse totaling over $90,000. Here are copies of the restraining order they are currently violating. And here is a sworn affidavit from my client regarding their attempt to have her sign over power of attorney under duress. If anyone here needs protecting, it is my client." Ms. Davis looked at the documents, her professional demeanor faltering. The story she had been told was clearly unraveling. "Mrs. Clark," she said, her tone softening, "can you tell me why you cut off financial support to your son?" "Because I discovered he and his wife sold a property I owned without my knowledge and kept the money," I said plainly. "Because I discovered the business I was funding for 5 years likely doesn't exist, because they believe I am not a person, but a bank account." Mr. Chen added, Ms. Davis, do you find it concerning when a 38-year-old man is financially dependent on his 72-year-old mother to the tune of nearly $100,000? She didn't answer. She looked around my clean, well-kept home. She looked at me, clear-eyed and articulate. Mrs. Clark, she said, closing her folder, I see no evidence that you are in any danger or unable to care for yourself. I will be closing this case. After she left, Mr. Chen looked at me. Margaret, they're desperate. They're throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. The next step will be a lawsuit to have you declared incompetent. The thought was terrifying. Can they win? They can try, but we have the truth, and we have more evidence than they know. That night, I cried. Not from fear, but from grief. I grieved for the son I had lost, or perhaps the son I had never truly had. And as the tears subsided, a new feeling took root, an unshakable resolve. They had taken my money and my memories. They would not take my freedom. The court date was set for 3 weeks later. I walked into that courtroom feeling not like a victim, but like a warrior. Across the room, Leo and Chloe sat with their lawyer. Leo wouldn't look at me, but Chloe stared me down with undisguised venom. Their lawyer's opening statement painted me as a confused, vulnerable senior being manipulated by a greedy neighbor and a predatory lawyer. Then they called their witnesses. Chloe took the stand and gave an award-winning performance, crying as she described my sudden decline. But under Mr. Chen's cross-examination, her story crumbled. Mrs. Clark, he asked, can you name your husband's business? She stammered, unable to give an answer. Is it true you told my client she was not immediate family? Her face flushed. That was taken out of context. Please, Mr. Chen said, provide the court with a context in which that statement is not cruel and dismissive. She couldn't. Leo was next. Seeing him swear to tell the truth and then proceed to lie about my mental state was the deepest cut of all. He spoke of my irrational behavior and paranoia. Mr. Chen's cross-examination was surgical. Mr. Clark, in the last 5 years, how much of your own money have you invested in your business? There was a long silence. Is it true you broke into your mother's home? We were concerned. Concerned enough to go through her private financial papers? He had no credible answers. Then it was our turn. My pharmacist testified that I managed my own health perfectly. The bank manager testified to my financial competence. Eleanor and my friends from the car club testified to my clarity and zest for life. Finally, I took the stand. I told my story simply and truthfully. The years of financial support, the sold cabin, the lies, the restraining order. The final question came from Mr. A. Chen. Mrs. Clark, why did you stop giving your son money? I looked at the judge. Because I realized I was funding a lifestyle, not a business. And I was enabling a lie, not supporting a dream. I decided it was time for me to invest in my own life. The judge retired to deliberate. When he returned, he looked directly at me. This court finds Mrs. Clark to be of sound mind and fully in command of her faculties. Her decisions, while difficult for her family, are rational and legally her right to make. The request for conservatorship is denied. Case dismissed. A wave of relief so profound washed over me that I almost collapsed. I had won. Leaving the courthouse, I saw Leo standing alone. For a fleeting moment, his eyes met mine, and I saw a flicker of what looked like shame. But it was too little, too late. That night, my friends threw me a party. We toasted not to victory, but to freedom. 3 months later, I sold the house and bought a top-of-the-line RV. I sued Leo and Chloe for the money from the cabin sale, and I won. I put some of it in a trust for my sister's grandchildren and used the rest to finally take the trip Robert and I had always dreamed of. I heard through the grapevine that Leo and Chloe had to declare bankruptcy. Maybe, just maybe, they would finally learn the value of earning something for themselves. Sometimes when I'm parked by the ocean, watching the sunset, I think of the woman I used to be, and I smile. Because she's gone. In her place is a woman who knows that true value isn't in a bank account, but in the freedom to choose your own road. And my road is wide open. That's my story for today, and it was a hard lesson, but a necessary one. I'm telling a new story here tomorrow and every day after that, so make sure you follow along and click that little bell so you don't miss a single one. I can't wait to see you again.